Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Erev Tov, everyone. The Parsha of Tetzaveh concludes with a description of the building of the Mizbeach HaZohav, the golden altar. The Mizbeach HaZohav was the Mizbeach, the altar that was used for the Ktoret, for the incense. And the Ramban, and the Sforno, and almost all the Meforshim, Rashi is not bothered by it because Rashi holds Ein Mukdam U'Muchar B'Torah. So wherever the Parsha is given, doesn't have anything to do with chronological order, etc. But the Ramban holds that the Torah follows a chronological order. There's a logical order as to how the parshas are given. And so therefore the question arises, why is the Mizbeach HaZohav described here at the end of Parshas Tetzaveh when all the kelim of the Mishkan are described for us already in Parshat Truma? In Parshat Truma, we read about the Aron and the Menorah, the Shulchan, the Mizbeach HaNechoshes. Now here at the beginning of Tetzaveh, we are informed about the Big Day Kahuna. And then all of a sudden at the end, we'll see some Mizbeach Zohav Tor, you should make a golden altar and to be Maariv Diktoras on it. So the Meforshim are troubled why, so to speak, it wasn't put in the same order of the Parshas that the Shulchan and the Menorah, the Kelim that were inside the Beis HaMikdash were put when the Menorah and the Shulchan are put in the same place in the southern part of the Eichel, where the Mizbeach HaZohav is going to be. So why is the Mizbeach HaZohav separate? So there are a few ideas here. One idea is that the Mizbeach HaZohav was only used for the Ktoros. No animal sacrifices were brought upon it, and it was reserved especially for the Ktoret. Now, what was the purpose of the Ktoret? Incense, the Gemara describes for us the 13 ingredients of the incense that was used for the Mizbeach. All the other korbanos are solid. It's meat, it's blood, it's bones. This is ephemeral. This is smoke. It's a fragrance. The Gemara says fragrance was of such power and reached such distances that in the words of the Gemara, the animals as far as Yericho all sneezed from the smoke of the Ktoret. So the Ktoret is really nothing. The sense of smell is not something that you can put your hands upon, that you can actualize. So the Meforshim say that the Mizbeach HaNechoshes, the bronze altar, which was the mizbeach that was used for the animal sacrifices, that was to be mechaper al aguf. That came to bring forgiveness for sins that were done by the body of the person, by actions of the people. The Mizbeach Hazov, the incense, which was not solid, which really was almost imaginary, that came to be mechaper on the neshama. That came to bring forgiveness for the soul of the Jewish people. What is meant by the neshama? So the Meforshim say it's the attitudes of the Jewish people, the mental and social attitudes. So if the Torah does not punish us, so to speak, for something that we do not do, lav she'ein bo ma'aseh ein malchus. If you don't do anything, but what if you think? What if you have a bad attitude? So Chazal say an interesting Gemara that no Jew who lived in Jerusalem ever had completed the day as being a sinner, because the Torah in the morning brought forgiveness for what happened at night, and the Torah and now in the evening and Bein Arboim brought forgiveness for what happened during the day. But it's a question of attitude. And that's what Chazal meant, that the Bayis Sheni was destroyed because of attitude. Sinos Chinom is attitude. Can't be measured. Don't even have to do anything against it. You know, I don't like him. I hate him. I don't do anything. I don't take any action. It's an attitude. So ordinarily, a person is not responsible for his attitudes. Yet, Klal Yisrael was held to the standard that its attitudes also mattered. And therefore, the Ketores had to be brought to be machaper for the attitudes of the people, for the neshama of the people, not just for the actions of the people. And therefore, it's separated from all of the other kelim which deal with the physicality and actuality of the people. And this only deals with the attitude, just like the fragrance can't be measured, the attitude can't be measured either. Now the Gemara teaches us, and we see it in the Chumash, that the Torah, the incense, was lethal. Used incorrectly or employed by people who should not have employed it, it was fatal. The Gemara describes, it's hard for us to imagine, but in the Bayis Sheni, there are close to 400 Kohanim Gedolim. The Bayis Rishon had only about a dozen. The Bayis Sheni had close to 400, because in the Bayis Sheni, it was a position that was corrupted. You could buy it. So why were there so many? Because most of them died. The Gemara in Yuma points that out to us. that the Kohanim had hooks to be able to lift the corpse of the Kohen Gadol out of the Holy of Holies. And most of them didn't make it. So you'll ask the question, why should anybody want to be the Kohen Gadol, right? The answer is, Lincoln had a famous statement that a certain person in the frontier of the West in the United States, they caught him stealing a horse, which was a great sin. So they took him and they tied him up and they poured tar over him and feathers, and they were carrying him out to dump him in the river. And he was heard to remark, he said, if it were not for the honor, I would forego the pleasure. The nature of people is that Napoleon said, people will die for a ribbon or a medal. So all of that is illogical, but that is how human beings operate. So therefore, to be the Kohen Gadol, okay, so, like everybody's going to die sometimes, but at least I was the Kohen Gadol. And therefore, in the Bayis Sheni, there was this plethora of Kohanim Gedolim, hundreds upon hundreds, who did not survive the year. So that's because the Ktoros is lethal. We find that in the plagues that existed in the Midbar, so Aaron and then later Elazar, they stopped the plague with the incense. Because the plague also was, you couldn't put your finger on it, right? It's the coronavirus. There's nothing there. How do you deal with it? So they stopped it with the incense. So the incense had the power of preventing plague and of curing plague. But the incense also was lethal. Moshe Rabbeinu told the Adas Korach, you want to be, you're playing with fire here. You're going to get killed. Take your pans and put in Ktoros and come tomorrow, and that'll be the contest. And by so doing, they were doomed. So the Gemara learns from here a few lessons. But one lesson is that there are many things in life that are very dangerous and lethal. And on the other hand, the same thing can cure and bring goodness. And it depends how it's employed. It depends who employs it. Like in our time, for instance, nuclear medicine. So it's a great boon. Diagnostic, and even curative. People are treated from terrible diseases with it. On the other hand, it's lethal. You can make bombs out of it. So the Ribono Shel Olam built into the world this quality that the very same thing can be terribly destructive, and it can be a great boon and a great help to humankind. So it depends who does it and who uses it and how it's used. So by Aaron HaKohen, the Ktoros is completely beneficial. By Korach V'Adoso, it's completely lethal. It's the same Torah. So there are many factors in life that have that lesson for us. And it cannot be looked at just realistically, but it has to be looked at so to speak, in spiritual terms. And therefore, the Torah was only a fragrance. It was nothing that you could hang on to. Finally, the Gemara says that the Torah Ma'ashir, the Kohanim that brought the Torah, became wealthy. If you had the Torah, you became wealthy. So the Gemara says, because of this, no Kohen was allowed to bring the Torah more than once in his lifetime, because the competition to bring it was so intense. So you could only bring it once. So what the Mefarshim say, that's also the same idea. Because Ma'ashir, to become wealthy, it's a relative thing. Who do you call wealthy? So it depends on you. Do you feel you're wealthy? You feel that you have something? Right? So there are people that have a great deal of money and they're empty, and there are people who physically may not have much, but they feel fulfilled. They have other things that gratify them. So that's the nature of Ktoret. So the nature of Ktoret is dependent on the person that brings it, and therefore the altar is separated, and it is on its own and not like the other kelim in the Mikdash, because it's not really physical. And that's what the Mefarshim say that they meant, that the Gemara means when it says that the Torah was mechaper on the neshama. Rabbi Tananya ben Akash Yomer Ratzatosh Baruch L'Zakos Yisrael Ficha Herbalahem Torah Mitzvot Shenemar V'Noich Hafetz Aman Tzidko Yabil Torah